Hi, I'm Simon. Welcome to The Ordinary Filmmaker. If you're new here, click subscribe to get notification of new videos like this one so you won't miss out on any news. And all the links to everything I talk about in this video, including any gear discussed, are placed in the description down below. But before I get into today's question and answer session, just a reminder that I'm still giving away this Canon EF 50mm f1.8 lens. Contest ends July 31st, which is less than 2 weeks away, right after Sony's announcement. If you'd like a chance to win, all you have to do is subscribe. There's no jumping through hoops, nothing other than that, just simply subscribe. If you'd like more information, I do have more information in the description down below, or you can watch this video here. All right, so let's get right into today's question and answer session. If you would like to submit a question to this show, just simply pay attention usually around Thursday or Wednesday night. On my community page, I put out a poll, and in there I ask for questions. And so all you have to do is put in your question, and there's a pretty good chance that your question will get posted into the next weekly video. All right, so let's get into our first question. Our first question comes from Bogdan. Bogdan says, I always skip your intro as I find it annoying. What do you think about making a logo for your channel and a more modern look? It's a very good question, Bogdan. When I first got that message, I thought, I don't know. I've gotten a few of these now, so maybe now's the time to upgrade. Maybe now's the time to change my intro. And when I first got this message, I think it was probably I was around 5,000 subs, and I said to the person at the time, I don't know who it was, sure, when I get to 10,000 subscribers, I'll go out and I'll change my intro. Well, Bogdan came up with this message, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, and I said, yeah, let's do it. And the intro at the beginning of my videos now looks exactly like this. And that's thanks to Bogdan. So if you're wondering, and I've gotten an awful lot of praise and an awful lot of, wow, that looks great. Well, guys, it's all thanks to Bogdan. So Bogdan, on his own free will, offered his time and effort, his resources, and came up with this. So I'm really appreciative of that. I've got a new logo, I've got a new intro. So it's really looking great. So thanks again, Bogdan. I'm very much appreciated. Nick Christie asks, do you expect Canon to add 1080 120 to the R5 soon after shipping? No, Nick, I really don't think so. And here's why. Because we can shoot 120 frames per second in 4K, it's very easy to bring that into our editing software, and the editing software will automatically downsample it to 1080, giving you 120 frames per second in 1080. But it would be nice to have it as an option, certainly. Cage Fanatic asks, what lens would you pair with a Canon R5 or R6? Cage Fanatic, I've already gone out and bought my lens. The first lens that I bought is the 24-105 f4, not the f4 to 7.1. This is the L series lens with weather sealing. And I think this has got to be one of the best all-round general purpose lens for either cameras for both photo and video. You've got all the major focal lengths. You've got 24, you've got 35, 40, 50, 85, 100. It's just I don't know, I think it's a terrific lens, and the optics are really good. It's not that heavy. It's not a lightweight either, but I think it's a terrific lens. If you're into photography, you also might want to consider the 85mm or the 50mm. If you're more about just traveling, you're an ordinary filmmaker or photographer, you might also want to consider the 24-240. That gives you a 10 times optical zoom. But here's where the 4K in both of these cameras kicks in. If you get the 24-105 and you shoot in 4K, but your projects are in 1080, you're effectively getting a 2 times optical zoom on top of that, which gives you up to 210. Now that really only works if you're shooting in 1080, because if you're shooting in 1080, those 4K source files, when brought into the computer, that's when you get the 2 times optical zoom. If your finished product is in 4K, which to a lot of us today is still pretty rare. I mean, yes, YouTube is one of those few areas where you're rewarded for having 4K, but in most situations you don't. And you would get that 2 times optical zoom. So keep that in mind when you're shooting in 4K and your project's in 1080, you have that ability to punch in, because these cameras do give enough detail to get an extra 2 times optical zoom off it. Oh, and one other lens too. I'm really stoked about the RF 15-35. I think that's an incredible lens for both photography and video. That's on my roadmap. I'm waiting for sales. I'm going to wait till Christmas, because right now I'm getting the R5 as soon as I can, and then probably within a couple of months I'm going to be getting the a7S III, and I'd really like to have both of these cameras as my primary cameras for the studio. I think the only way to properly review these cameras is to have them out in the field for at least a month or two before giving a final review. And what I'll be doing I'm probably stepping on another question I've got later, but what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be shooting with these cameras so you can get to see what it's like to use them day in and day out before I give my final review. If you're a photographer, I really do want you to take a look at the 28-70. A lot of people go with the 24-70, but this new focal length by Canon, the 28-70, it's something you really, really want to consider to have in your bag if you're a portrait photographer. So those are the lenses that I think are great. Like I said, I'm starting off with a 24-105. You really can't go wrong with that lens, and it's not all that expensive. You can get it for around, I think the MSRP is around $1,100 US. I was able to buy it at Downtown Camera in Toronto, and the equivalent price in US was around $850 or about $1,150 Canadian, which is still on sale until I think August the 6th. And of course, I've got links to B&H down below as well that you can find this as well. So I think it's a terrific lens. Rippery Videography asks, are you going to go through with getting the R5 or see what Sony does in a week or two? Kind of let the cat out of the bag on that one, didn't I? So yes, I'm definitely getting the R5. There's an awful lot of demand for the R5. Canon has a huge segment of the market. I think Canon has something like 50% of the market, somewhere around there. So there's a lot of interest on the R5. So I'm going to get that camera. I'm going to take it through tests. I'm going to shoot all my videos with it, and I'm going to probably spend about a month with it before I do my final review on it. Then I'm going to do the same with the Sony a7S III. I'm going to buy the Sony a7S III and take it through its paces, and then I'll have both cameras as my primary studio cameras. Now, if you'd like to help me out, if you're interested in buying any camera, whether it be a Sony, whether it be a Canon, a Fuji, whatever it is, take a look at my links, my affiliate links in the description down below, because if you buy something through those links, I get a little bit of a commission, and then I can use that towards buying these cameras because they're not cheap. The R5 alone is around $4,000, and the lens is around $1,100, and then there's a Sony a7S III. We don't even know what that's going to be, so that's why I'm not waiting. I've just decided I'm going to go ahead and get both cameras. Critical Thinking asks, how much do you earn from YouTube with 10,000 subscribers? And do you plan on becoming a full-time YouTuber? Well, in this chart here, you can see what I'm pulling in daily. Now keep in mind, I'm producing almost a video every day. So this works out to be about $1,300 a month. This month it might be projected to make anywhere up to $1,500 a month. That's definitely not enough for me to have as a full-time job. Now I think the sweet spot is somewhere around 100,000 subscribers. When you get to this point, I think it's very possible to make $100,000 a year, but I don't consider that to be stable income. YouTube could make changes to how they pay out money. There could be a global economic recession and they reduce the payout. Right now, if you're producing a camera channel, you're getting anywhere from around $5 to $7 per 1,000 views. What if they cut that in half? That could dramatically change my income. What if they change their formulas or anything? And they've done this in the past. If you were producing children's videos, I think about a couple of years ago, they changed things and it dramatically impacted how much money people were getting. So I don't consider the YouTube source of income to be stable in any way whatsoever, unless I'm able to pull in, 7 figures like Peter McKinnon and others are. I'm not willing to look at this as a full-time job. I enjoy it as a hobby. I enjoy it doing it as a part-time job, but I definitely don't see it as a full-time job, although I'm currently invested anywhere from 3 to 6 hours a day, depending on the news cycle and whether it's a work day or not. But you might also be asking, well, Simon, yes, but you must make an awful lot of money on these affiliate links, right? Well, here's a slide that I took just a couple of days ago. This is from B&H. And you can see overall, I've got about $85 in the bank, which is not a huge amount of money. You can make almost as much on affiliate links as you can with your standard YouTube revenue, but I'm also not promoting it as much, but there is a potential there. I could make a little bit more. If you guys love my videos and you want to buy stuff, do check out what you can get these cameras for on Amazon or B&H, and that little commission goes back into the channel and helps me out. But yeah, you don't make a ton of money off of the affiliate links, or at least I'm certainly not right now. Hutch Video asks, do you worry about burnout? Have you considered an assistant editor for the future? Oh, I'm definitely concerned. I'm definitely worried about, I'm definitely paying attention to burnout. I'm kind of in that stage where I can't wait to produce videos, but then sometimes towards the end, I'm like, oh, why am I doing this? I need a break. It's kind of like having an angel and a devil on your shoulder going, you know, do it more, do it less, do it more. And I'm old enough that I'm able to sit back and say, okay, you know what? I think you need a break today. I think, and for example, today it's 7 o'clock in the morning. I'm shooting this video for an hour and then I'm done. I'll bring it into the computer just to make sure everything's okay. And then I spend the rest of the day with my family. And then once my wife's getting my son ready for bed, I'll go downstairs, I'll do some editing for an hour, and then I'll take another break, and then I'll come back maybe a few hours later, finish it up, and put it up for Sunday's release. If this gets to a point where it takes over my life and becomes toxic to my life, then I'm going to completely just cut it out. But I think I'm far from that. A couple of months ago, I got to a point where I was feeling a little burned out. I was producing a lot, but I wasn't being smart about things. I've changed my workflow so I can produce these things an awful lot quicker now. The videos that I produce during the day are generally shot or completed during my breaks or my lunch break. And so by the time I get to the end of the day, I don't really have any work to do, unless of course there's more videos coming out. And that's significantly helped reduce the amount of time I spend on each video. Yes, there are some quality issues, but that's one of the risks I'm willing to take. But also, I don't use a green screen anymore. That saves me an awful lot of time. A lot of these slides that I throw up on the screen, a lot of them, because I've created so many, are reusable from the past, so I don't have to recreate those. And the thumbnails, I'm coming up with a standard theme, so that way I don't have to change a lot there too. So everything I do is in anticipation of simplifying my workflow, but I am paying attention to it. You guys also say, hey, Simon, slow down, maybe you're doing too much, and I do listen, because right now this is a hobby. It is something I enjoy, and I want to keep it that way. Petros says, could you talk about the anti-alias filter on the sensor and how it impacts sharpness in pics? Please discuss its usefulness in video. Thank you, and keep it up. So I'm going to get right to the answer, and then I'll give you a little bit of an explanation. The reason why an anti-alias filter is put on the sensor is to help reduce something called moire. If you take a look at this picture here, you can see that it's got this weird sort of artifact on it. And if this was actually a video, what you would actually see is sort of this vibrating pattern. And it generally occurs with things such as patterns, or especially shirts or jeans. I think a couple of weeks ago we saw it in these jeans here. They were vibrating back and forth. It hasn't been doing it the last couple of weeks, so it must have been a combination of different things. And that's really, really distracting. It's really annoying. So camera companies put these AA filters on it to help reduce that effect. The unfortunate thing, though, is that to do it, they blur the image. So you lose a bit of sharpness, and that's really, really annoying. So why do they do this? Well, this is where we're going to dig down a little deeper. It's to do with the architecture of the sensor and the filter. Many, many years ago, a man by the name of, I think it was Bruce Baer, named after the Baer filters named after him, created this filter to be able to pull in the light from the sensor and to be able to, just like the cones in our eyes, determine what is red, green, and blue. So they came up with red, green, and blue sensors within the, or sensors is the wrong word, filters. But then they had one left over, so they just added another green. So what happens is if you're shooting a shirt, like again this one here, it's mostly blue. So you've really only got one out of those 4 pixels that's able to accept blue light. If we take a look at this image here, you can see this is kind of a representation of what the filter looks like over the sensor. Now, they're not actually painted these different colors, they just accept different wavelengths. And the wavelength for red is different from the wavelength for blue, which is different for the wavelength for green. So they put different filters on these photo sites. And so what happens is if you've got a straight line, and you imagine a straight line going directly through this filter here, and that line is blue, it's going to touch very little blue. So what they do is they use some sort of fancy math to say, well, okay, these particular photo sites here, they must be seeing blue too, so it'll fill in the blue. So these vibrating patterns are a result of compensating for this filter design. So is there a way around it? Not really, no. There are some cameras that have different filters, such as Fuji. I believe they use an RGBW filter. But there are also some cameras that actually don't have this AA filter, and it's designed more for photography. But the issue that you will have with those sensors is that where there is a chance of having more A, it's going to stand out a lot more, but you'll have that sharpness. You won't have that blurriness. So unfortunately, that's kind of where we are today. I know camera companies are working on a different design, but it takes a long time to kind of perfect these things. Jimmy Roberts asks, is the Sony a7 IV in development? If so, is its release planned for this year? Yeah, it's definitely in development. Camera companies don't start development and then decide to restart development again. What they do is they have a roadmap for development of capabilities for both the software and the hardware. And once they've finished working on one version, another group gets ready for localization, getting it ready for production, while the developers and coders, they start working on the capabilities for the new camera. And that is a multi-year process. In terms of when we're going to see the a7 IV, well, it's just over 2 years, so we could see it at any time. I really don't expect we're going to see it next week or the week after, simply because if you look at the invitation, it says Sony a7S III on it. And these are both very big cameras, so I couldn't imagine the a7 IV taking a back seat and pulling an Apple saying, hey, and one more thing, and then releasing the a7 IV. Could we get it this year? Definitely. If we do, probably around the October timeframe. We're also supposed to see some cameras from Canon coming up in the fourth quarter, or it could come out next year. And I think next year is probably a better bet, but it's definitely on the horizon. We're closer to it than we'd expect. That's assuming, and this is a big if, that they're not going to take 5 years to develop it like they did with the a7S III. And I don't think they will. I think that the reason why it's taken so long with the a7S III, it's a video-centric camera, and there's been a lot of technological hurdles that they've had to address. But we'll know more about that in about 10 days. Fernando asks, if the Sony rumors are true, will the a7S III be a better camera than the R6? And how much do you think it would cost in your prediction? That's a tough one to say, but I'm really willing to go out on a limb here and say that I think the a7S III is going to be a better video camera than the R6. And I know I'm probably going to get a little bit of hate mail over here, but just listen to my reasoning for a moment. The R6 is really 50-50 between photo and video. So it's not going to be the best at either one. It's going to be very good at both, granted. But the a7S III is primarily a video camera. It's video-centric. I'd say it's 85% video and maybe 15% photo. So what you're going to get is a camera that from the very beginning, Sony said they've redesigned the whole thing, and they've redesigned it based on video capabilities. So I think from a video point of view, the a7S III is going to be a better camera. From a photo point of view, well, the R6 is definitely going to be a better camera. If you're 50-50, well, then the R6 is probably a better camera. But if you're more video-centric like me, the a7S III is going to look really good. In terms of price, a lot of us thought, hey, maybe $2,000. But I'm thinking it's going to be between $3,000 and $4,000 based on the capabilities, and I'm simply looking at the S1H when it first came out and the R5. Could Sony do something like $1999? Sure they could, but they're leaving money on the table, and for a company that needs to provide value to its shareholders, I'm thinking probably around $3 to $4 grand is probably more likely, Thurandu. Frosty asks, will you get the R5 or R6? Will you get the Wi-Fi grip? It appears it will support Wi-Fi 6, but need to confirm. The grip has Ethernet out, which can stream or send directly to bonded 4G or 5G device on your hip. Well, I've already let the cat out of the bag in other videos, Frosty, but I'm definitely getting the R5. I could get the R6 maybe in 2021, but we'll have to wait and see how the cash flow goes. In terms of battery grip, at this point, I have absolutely no interest in buying a battery grip, but once I have the camera and I'll play around with it, I might go ahead and do that. From what I understand, the R5 is capable of about an hour and 20 minutes of video, and that's pretty good in one setting. That's enough to shoot one of these videos. And if it runs out, I just pop in a new battery and I'm good to go. If I do get a battery grip, which one will I get? Hard to say. I really haven't thought about it too much at this point other than for battery use. So at this point, just the simple battery grip might work. But it's really hard to say. I really don't know at this point. I haven't given it too much thought. Stephen Blackwood says, regarding the 30-minute record limit, you now shoot on the 70D. When doing your Q&A videos, doesn't the camera stop at 30 minutes? Well, yes, if I keep talking and let it go to 30 minutes, then yes, it will stop. And I actually have my Tascam recorder here, so every now and then after each question, I look down and I check the timer, because it's a whole lot better to get up, stop the camera, and restart it than to actually go back and redo a question, because when it does stop while you're talking, you actually lose more than what you just said. You probably lose a good 30 seconds or so. So is this a problem? It's annoying as hell. I'm really glad to hear that Sony doesn't have any record limits. Really, really frustrating. But a 30-minute time limit for most of the videos I shoot really isn't that big of a problem. Most of my run and gun stuff, it's not more than a minute at most. But what's really annoying with that 30 minutes is when I'm doing studio videos, especially if I'm starting to get up into 20 minutes. I'm starting to think about that record limit, and then I stop focusing on what I'm talking about. I stop focusing on the camera and talking directly to you, and that's really annoying. So here's an advantage. For those of you that shoot Canon, there's a software called Magic Lantern, and what that does is it really changes the firmware. It doesn't write directly to the camera. It writes something to the camera that looks for the firmware on the SD card, and with that, you can eliminate record times and provide other capabilities that Canon doesn't think we should have. If you've got a new camera, I don't necessarily recommend installing the software. I do recommend carefully reading it, watching YouTube, because if you've got an older camera, there are definite benefits to Magic Lantern, such as removing record limits. Wouldn't it be nice, even if Canon just said, hey, look, $100 and you can remove this? It'd be awesome if they could do that. I just find that record limit so annoying. So I'm not too worried about the 30-minute record time. The overheat, I'm not too worried about that either, because most of the video modes I will be shooting in, 1080, 4K, 4K 120, it's not going to be an issue. Now 4K HQ will be, but I'll use that mostly for run and gun. Not really going to use that for studio work. There's really no benefit for me to shoot in HQ. If anything, shooting in 4K 24 frames per second in IPB makes more sense. But and 4K 120, I'm not going to shoot anywhere close to 20 minutes at 120 frames per second. Most likely it might be my son doing something, so I'll shoot him for maybe 20, 30 seconds at slow motion, which is a lot. You've got to multiply that by 4, and that's how much time you would actually have. So if I shoot him for, let's say 15 seconds, riding his bike or something, or playing with water, once I put that into my 1080p project, or sorry, 4K project at, let's say 30 frames per second, that will now give me a minute, and I'm not going to do slow-mo for a minute in the final product. So I'm not worried about that mode. 8K, if I'm shooting 8K, it's going to be for particular scenarios, such as I'm in a beautiful, beautiful part of the world and I want to get as much detail as I can for post-production, then yeah, I'll shoot quite a bit of 8K, but I'll also need to have a few memory cards with me, because 8K is really going to suck it back pretty big. JC Never Stops, I love the name because I never stop either. JC Never Stop asks, do the record limits on the R5 and R6 make a difference to 1080 when you've been recording for some time in 4K already and then switch before the camera completely overheats? That's a really good question. And I'll refer to Sam Gao. He's one of Canon's ambassadors in Malaysia, and he had this to say about the overheating and then switching to photos or 1080. Hey Simon, thanks for the shout out. I really appreciate it. Just wanted to add a few more points after processing what had happened, and he's referring to his video. I don't think the camera actually overheats. The warning signal is referred to as the overheating control, and when I was shooting, the camera didn't get hot, it got warm, so I think the camera actually doesn't overheat. I believe it's more of a safety precaution of stopping the camera from reaching temps that could damage it further. So he goes on to say, and this is where this part really answers your question, I do find it pretty awesome that the camera doesn't completely shut off, and in the worst case scenario, you can still shoot full HD and stills. I think Canon could potentially increase the threshold limit in firmware, but I think it's highly unlikely. And Canon would focus on the overall reliability of the camera, than risk damaging it due to overheating. Just my 2 cents. Appreciate everything you're doing so far. So there you go. He's answered the question much better than me. If you're shooting in 4K or whatever other video mode and it overheats, or you get that overheating warning, you can simply switch over to stills or shooting full HD 1080, and you can keep going. Lee Stevens asks, do expensive lenses really make that much of a difference to image quality compared to cheap ones? That's a good question, and Lee, it's really about what you want to get out of your camera. If you're a wedding or portrait photographer and this is your line of business, then you want to have really good quality. You want to get the right optics, and so getting something like a 28-70, a 24-70, A 50mm, you really want to have a good lens. You want to have really good sharpness at the center and as much out to the edges as you can through the different focal ranges. And you want to eliminate as much chromatic aberration as you can. But if you're an ordinary filmmaker or mom and dad, brother or sister, grandma, grandpa, well, you know, lenses like the 24 to 240 or the 24 to 105 f4 to 7.1 are probably going to be fine for you in most cases. You're really not going to be hunting, looking out to the edges to see, oh, yeah, the sharpness is a little bit off there, and oh, that color, the chromatic aberration is a bit strong there. To be honest with you, especially if you're starting, you're not going to see the difference. You're going to be perfectly happy with it. But it doesn't take long before you start to grow, and if you're the type of person who does want to eventually grow, then do pay attention to some things. If you're planning on growing and getting better at this, then if you're looking at the 24 to 105 f4 to 7.1, save a little more and get the 24 to 105 f4. Because one thing that lens gives you, forget that it's a little bit shorter, forget that it's a little bit lighter, and forget that it's a little bit more expensive. What you're getting is you're getting f4 through the entire focal range. So as you zoom in, it's f4 the entire way. So why does that make a difference? On a sunny day like today is going to be, with I think it's going to be, yeah, in the low 90s, you're going to have plenty of light. So it's not a problem. But as the sun starts to set, or if you're inside, if you zoom out to 105, you're getting 7.1. And that's a whole lot less light hitting the sensor. With the constant f4 aperture throughout the entire focal length, having a constant focal ratio range of f4 makes a huge difference. It's just going to look better. But again, it really depends on what you're looking for, because yes, the more expensive lenses do make a difference. The sharpness is a whole lot better. There's less chromatic aberration. The picture will look better. But unless you're really, really serious about getting really, really good at photography or videography, or it's going to become your business, no, it's not necessary. One other thing about the f4 version of the 24 to 105, it's weather seal, just like the R6 and the R5. You put on the 24 to 240 or the f4 to 7.1, 24 to 105, it's not weather seal, so moisture can get in. And honestly, both of these cameras are expensive. I would try to get the f4 version just for that weather sealing. You don't think you'll need it? Well, what if you're in Niagara Falls one day? It's constantly raining, it's constantly misty right up to the falls, and I wouldn't want to risk moisture getting in. Now that being said, I've taken my 70D with the 18 to 35 right on the boat, and it hasn't died. So, you know, you pays your dollar, you takes your chances. OJ Hansen has a great question. I'm concerned about the R5 overheating on a film and commercial set. I get the idea of having 20 minutes straight to record 8K, but on set there's a constant starting and stopping, recording for 5 minutes, for another 1 to 2 minutes, and turning off the camera, resetting, and or dealing with actors. How do you think the camera would work on set? Well, very simply put, the R5 is not meant as your main go-to camera all the time. Now, that being said, it doesn't mean that somebody out there isn't going to say, I'm going to make this work. People have shot, well, one person shot an entire motion picture using the iPhone. It doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. The way this camera was designed is not as a main camera. C300, C100, C500, maybe even the a7S III might be able to do that, but the R5 doesn't. The R5 is more of a B camera, a backup camera. You can put them in cars, they're smaller, you can put them in smaller spaces where you can't put a big camera, and they're really good for that. They're also more disposable. If you're going to have crashes, these cameras will hold up better. But on a set, now if you want to use them more prominently, well, then you're going to have at least 5 of them. You're maybe going to have 10 of them. And that's what other filmmakers have told me, that where they plan on using these more in their work, they're not buying one of these things, they're buying a bunch of them. When one overheats, they bring in the new one, they use it, and they cycle through them. And in most professional sets, you're not going to have one main camera either. There's going to be other cameras because, you know, things are always going wrong. So on any major set, you're going to have much more than just one camera, even if it's your main camera. Is the price difference worth it? I'm asking because I saw a bundle with the R6 that has the cheaper one. What's the difference between them? I know the L has a better material quality, but is that all? Yeah, good question. Since I've already covered this in different bits and pieces through the rest of the questions, let me just quickly sum up. Yes, the construction is better, but it's also weather sealed. And the R6 is at $24.99, still an expensive camera, and I'd want to protect that. But also, you get that f4 when you're always zoomed in to 105. So in low light or indoors, you're going to get less noise. And for me, the extra price is, yeah, definitely worth the difference. Why do you need a 9.44 million EVF if the a7S III will be a mainly video camera? Do you think it's really a 12 megapixel stacked sensor? I honestly don't know. The one thing about when you've got a EVF like this is you just don't even see any sort of pixelation. It's like having retina displays on iPhones. Resolution stops being something you talk about. Will it be a stacked sensor? I strongly think so. I could not imagine Sony spending 5 years on this camera, releasing something such as a stacked sensor technology, which gives you much better autofocus, much faster response times, quicker exposure and all that stuff. You get much better computing, and then say, yeah, we're not going to put it in the a7S III. So I really do expect it's going to be a stacked sensor. I thought it was going to be a 15 megapixel stacked sensor, but from the information that we've seen come out recently about the sensors that Sony's got, then yeah, a 12 megapixel stacked sensor is definitely something that makes a lot of sense, especially for a video-centric camera that doesn't go higher than 4K. Cognitive Evolution asks, does the 29.59 time limit for the Canon R5 apply if you're recording 4K 60 422 solely to a Ninja 5 or other external recorder? I believe Fuji's X-T3 and X-T4 time limits do not apply when recording externally. Simply put, whenever you're exporting through the HDMI, whenever you're doing live streaming or recording to external recorder, no, time limits do not apply. Overheating limits do, yes, but time limits don't. Lincoln asks, as your YouTube channel is growing, have sponsors reached out to you? Simple answer, no. However, if you're a sponsor and you're watching, I'm open to discussion. Rajendra asks, when are you coming up on social media like Instagram or Facebook? If you're there now, then when will you let us know? So I am on Facebook, but I'm not on Instagram, and I don't see myself adding an Instagram account anytime soon. I also have Twitter, but I don't use these nearly as much. Now, if you'd like to talk to me and communicate with me, really the best place is through the community, through the polls, through the videos in the comment section. I give that priority number one. Now, for Facebook, where Facebook is really handy is if you've got something really important you want to tell me, if you've heard about a rumor, or you've gotten some news, or it's something pretty important, then reach out to me there. And the reason why it's best to do that is because I really don't encourage questions and comments through Facebook, because then I'm managing in two places. And I'll be honest with you, by answering the comments on YouTube, it works better towards my engagement scores, which helps my channel grow more. So it's really more important to have those questions there. And if you post questions, especially within the first hour of when I produced a video, then your chances of getting your question answered or comment read is almost 100%. So yeah, I do have a Facebook account. It's called The Ordinary Filmmaker. And I have a Twitter account called The Ordinary Filmmaker. And I don't think I've posted to Twitter in like months. I think I had 2 people that had subscribed to my Twitter account. And you know, if you subscribe to my YouTube channel, you get notifications of new videos and polls. So I just don't see the point of duplicating a lot of effort. Oh, and one thing, somebody did ask me at some point is, how come I'm not getting notification for your videos? Well, here's what happens. YouTube will only send out notifications for a maximum of 3 times in one day. So if I've, let's say, done 2 videos and a poll, there's my 3 notifications. If I release another video, no notification. So that's something I learned yesterday. Torben asks, is Tamron making lenses for the RF mount? Well, a man by the name of Mark Morris, who I believe still works for Tamron, said in an interview with Inglewood, it was Inglewood Camera, that yes, they are in development, they're making lenses for the RF mount, and it will be out soon. It was back in, I believe, June, maybe May. I believe it was June of this year. Great, so here's that clip. What? No? Oh, I've heard that that clip is now gone. What? Can't find it anywhere. It's interesting. So this interview that Mark Morris had made on behalf of Tamron as a sales rep for Tamron, in that video with Inglewood Camera, is gone. It can't be found anywhere. What does that tell me? Well, it tells me there's something in that video that somebody doesn't want out there. Now, I'm making the assumption it's related to this, but it could have been something else in there. But I can't find that clip anywhere else. So, yeah, I think it's safe to say that Tamron has the RF mount under consideration, that it is in some form of development. But in terms of when we're going to get it out, it's really hard to say. Sigma has made a commitment. They said, yes, they're working on a development. We could see some lenses this year or in the first half of next year, but it's really hard to say. Well, that's it. That's all the questions I have for today. Thank you so much for submitting your questions. When I first started doing this, I think I had maybe 10 questions, and I was doing this every 2 weeks. But now I'm getting so many questions that I can't answer them all. I'm making this a weekly affair. If you would like to submit your question, all you have to do is go to my community page, and sometime late Wednesday to Thursday is when I put out the poll, and I say, do you have a question for the ordinary filmmaker? Yes, it's in the comment section down below, or no, thank you, nothing today. So if you go ahead and put it in the comment section down below, based on how relevant it is to what's going on, and statements I don't put in, I only put in questions, you get them surfaced here. And I think I probably had about 5 to 7 that I didn't get to, because 20 is kind of the limit. It's kind of hard to go over that, and I start to lose my voice. I don't know if you've noticed it's changing a little bit. I definitely need some tea, honey water, or something like that. But I really do appreciate you guys commenting. This is feeling a lot more like a community now, and I really, really appreciate that. And one other thing, if you guys like searching for Waldo and little puzzles like that, what I've started doing in my videos as a bit of an homage to Peter Gregg is I'm hiding a Windex bottle somewhere in the scene. See if you can be the first to find out where it is. If you win, you're not going to get an R5 or anything like that. You'll get, what is it that you get when you win something but you don't get anything with it? You get the credit for it. How about that? Anyhow, thanks so much for watching The Ordinary Filmmaker. Don't forget, I'm still giving away this Canon EF 50mm f1.8 lens. The draw is in a week and a half, and after that, then I'll think of what my next draw is, and I won't do it for a month and a half like I did this time. Would you guys be interested in the 24 to 24mm macro EF lens? Let me know in the comment section down below. But thanks so much for watching the video. We'll see you again soon.